Good morning out there, everybody. Track fans, high jump fans, training fans, sports fans. It's been a couple weeks, but Sky High and Fly Guy here at Raise the Bar is doing another podcast. So it's been it's been a minute, and a lot of a lot of water has gone under the bridge, as they say. Having my morning coffee because I'm getting up pretty early for most people out here on the West Coast of the United States, beautiful Southern California, to welcome a guest from not halfway across the world, but relatively close. I guess Sweden's about 9 hours, 8 or 9 hours ahead of us, if you want to look at it that way. So my guest today is Henrik Thoms, who we've had on once before, and Henrik is has a very interesting place here in the high jump world. He was trained by, when he was jumping, the great Stefan Holm. Stefan Holm is one of two men in the world who have jumped in the high jump 2 feet over their own heads. So you do the math on that, and it comes out to centimeters. I don't know exactly what 2 feet comes out to be, but it's a sizable chunk. And Stefan Holm was 5'11" and a half and jumped 7'11" and a half. And the great Franklin Jacobs was 5'7 3/4, jumped 7'7 3/4. So those are our two. Now, Henrik's claim to fame is nothing like that, but he was a solid, 220 jumper. I think he's jumped 2.5. And he was trained by Stefan. So he has a unique perspective of being trained by someone who was obviously at the top of their game for a long time. And then now that he has left the world of competition for now, I'm pretty sure he has started his own coaching career. And part of that coaching career is to work with and help train. He's working with Stefan Holm, helping Stefan Holm train his own son, who is now, I believe, a 7'2" level high jumper. And this we we opened up. I think it's been about a year, but we had the two of us talking for quite a while. Had a real blast talking. Just high jump and high jump training. About a year ago. So, been trying to get back with Stefan, with Henrik, kind of getting with Stefan through Henrik, right? Because the stuff that Stefan Holm did was just amazing. He was a very fast, what I call European single armor, who, just amazing. If you see any of his stuff that he posts on Instagram and, stuff that has gone to YouTube, he was, he routinely saw him do stuff that was just pretty amazing. He would do hurdles, straight on hurdle drills where, the video's looking right at him and you could see his preparation. And these hurdle drills were not the way that I would do hurdle drills or guys that I've seen, do hurdle drills like Brandon Stark from Australia, who does some amazing stuff over hurdles. But Brent, these hurdles were set up, and you could easily see from the camera that they were above his own head. And he would run straight ahead, put his foot down straight, and drive his knee up. And kind of, he would get so high that he didn't even have to do a radical, move as a scissor kick. He would just kind of get that knee up and bring it over and 6 feet off the ground easily. Repeats, with 3 steps maybe in between. And so, just phenomenal stuff. And you could see right away why he was good at what he did. But the demonstrations that he has done on, there's one in particular with a guy, a Japanese scientist, throwing a stick at the ground and, watching it spin around and go over the bar in a demonstration of the physics behind, the flight pattern of a high jumper. And it's really, really great stuff. And he was obviously highly talented and a hard worker and all those other things. And the accomplishments speak for themselves. You don't, there's not a long list of athletes that have jumped um, in the 240s. 240, 2 meters 40 is 7:10 and a half, which is the American record, happens to also be the Olympic record set by Charles Austin. And then, there have been Barshim, Bondarenko, great Sotomayor. There have been some others, Stefan Holm, and others that have cracked the 241. 241 is either 7:10 and three quarters or 7:11 a quarter, maybe 7:11. 242, 243, Barshim and Bondarenko both jumped in competition. 244, they were nudging up very close. I think we've gotten to 243. Not sure if anybody's jumped 244. Sotomayor jumped 245, which is 8 feet and a half inch. I remember all of the fives because from 215 on, it stays in a 2 inch progression. So 215 is 7 feet and a half. 220 is 7.2 and a half. 225, 7.4 and a half. 230, 7.6 and a half. 235, 7.8 and a half. 240, 7.10 and a half. And then 245 is 8 feet and a half inch. So those are the only ones that I have memorized completely. Just because, feet and inches are so awkward, obviously, because they don't always translate out the same. Um, the metric is very simple. It's 1 centimeter or, 10 millimeters or 100 millimeters at a time or whatever you want to say, but it's much easier to deal with, powers of 10, obviously, right? But anyway, there's a small list, and Stefan Holm is right at the top of it. I was looking to see if I can dig out the that particular drill. And here we're looking at the organization of stuff that I have in my files, which is fantastic, but it's also, uh, is it highly organized or not? Here's raise the bar stuff. No. Um, Flight and layout training and drills. I have some ideas that it could be in there, but I got a lot of images, lean back, Stark. Man, take a look at that, see if Stark is there. Yeah, that's really good stuff. We're getting ready for Stenrick to join us, so Henrik Thoms, and that's just run throughs. Okay, that's not bad. That's not my best Stark stuff, but it's not what we're looking for either. Lean back, layout. Okay, that's flight and layout. Distance from the bar. Love that. Got to be far away from the bar out there. We haven't talked about that too much. I'm still organizing. It has so many videos and trying to get them into some semblance of coherency is always tough. All jump videos. Maybe this is better. All inclusive technique videos. Straight, curve, takeoff, flight. About takeoff mechanics. Knee drive angle. No, no, no. Knee up and across. Holding knee drive across. Foot plant angle. Yeah, no. It's one of my own kids. That's not. What else do we have? That's takeoff mechanics. Okay. All inclusive. How inclusive is what we want to know. Clients, elites to analyze. Could be in here. Brandon, Stefan Holm. Getting warmer. Knee across. This could be it. It is. All right. So, those of you listening on your podcast, on your drive to work here on Raise the Bar, I have opened up a video, which of course is going to do you no good depending on how well I can describe it. Those of you at home watching on YouTube will see as big a picture as I can get of Stefan Holm here. Uh, where is it? There it is. Man, it can't get any bigger than that. No, let me see. That didn't do me any good. Hold, please. Oh, there it is. All right. But you haven't been able to tell yet. You're dealing with a dinosaur when it comes to all this stuff as far as technology goes. Okay. Let's get me and my face out of the way. That is Stefan Holm coming in. No, notice first of all here his takeoff leg is angled very far away from the bar. His upper body does not quite match, but it's my contention that for you to be able to push hard to your left for a left footer, coming from the right side, for you to be able to push to the left with your left foot, you have to really get that left foot across your body. And you can see on this picture that looks like his left foot is a good length of his leg and some more distance away from his own head if you were to drop a line straight down. So he can push very hard off of his left side, surprisingly, drive the knee up and across. So you see everything going to the left here in a second. So this is 2 steps away. And you see a very well executed slide step because what I call slide step, which is the last left, is getting way across, in front and across. Um, and then here, the fascinating thing about Stefan Holm is how well he cycles into his takeoff. So if you watch his foot, the only one that doesn't cycle here is the left, last left. It's the slider. But the right foot, in the middle of the very beginning of this video, you cannot see his right leg because his foot is basically right behind him, kicking him in the butt as he's sliding his foot through. So his left leg is already sliding his right foot before it goes into what we're going to call the drive phase, the takeoff, knee drive. It is, kicking him in the butt behind him and therefore be able to move very fast and very long, but not as long as the last left. So he also does something I'm preaching to everyone, which is a very big lean back angle on his left leg. This is where you can really spot the elites at work because his right leg is now straight and his body's lined up with that, but he's also heel toeing it. And now, if you heel toe the whole way up, you're going to have trouble getting any speed because it's very difficult to run fast off your heels. So not impossible. Both not Mahuchich, but what's the other the Russian gal? Um, anyway, I watch her run, and she looks like she's running on her heels the whole way, but it's not recommended for top speed. And but he's on the balls of his feet sprinting all the way until these last two, where you see a marked heel toe, heel toe. And so that foot again, as he steps off that right foot. So he's cycling, he has just stepped off the right, and the foot disappears. Then you see the slider with the heel toe on the right. See left foot, heel toe. And then you see his right foot disappear again. You can see it right behind him kicking the butt. And then literally 4 or 5 frames later, his knee drive is up and across. And what I preach and teach is that knee drive has to pass the straight line looking at his hip. And it is so far across that it's not the knee that's blocking your view, it's the opposite hip. It really gets through there. It's amazing. And from there, he just leaves it. There is never a point where he is trying to do anything with that left knee other than leave it up. He does not pop his hip. You see, a lot of guys will drive that knee back down at a certain point, but he just kind of, he really does what my friend Doug Nordquist likes to preach and teach, which is just let the curve take you over the bar. And up at the top, he pulls his arm back a little, but you can see a really nice circular position. If you drew a line from his head to his feet, this jump is showing it's at 240, 2 meters 40. So it's 710 and a half jump in a practice workout, which is pretty amazing. And you just see this amazing position. And unfortunately, it closes off right at that spot. But when you see him up and over the bar, his hips are up and over this thing, and the position's amazing, but he doesn't really go for a layout until his head is, and we preach and teach this, and I'm going to draw this angle out one time, but I'm going to swear it's a 45-degree angle. I'm going to write a book called The Law of 45-degree Angles, and it's everywhere for me in the technique of the high jump. But he's riding his knee. It's within 2 or 3 inches of the peak height that it's going to get to. And his head is already at the bar, literally. At this point, you can see him throw his head or pull his shoulders towards his feet. And that causes the very top of his head to go straight down. And that's another classic great position. Now, if the top of your head is going anywhere but straight down, it's my contention that you probably started your layout too early. And as a result of that, you would think you would rotate more, but you actually stall and stall earlier. So, that depends on what bar height we're dealing with. If you're jumping over 4 feet, you can throw your head back anytime and probably spin pretty well because I'm going to come up with a list of rules that need to be obeyed before you can lay out. And the rules hold all the way up. The higher and higher the bar gets, it's just the timing that changes, And obviously, if you throw your head back too early at a really high bar, all kinds of havoc, breaks loose. But anyway, we've got this on track, so I'm going to leave that there so we can talk about that with there he is, the man, the myth, the legend himself. We're waiting to see. He's like me. He's got his coffee. If he's I got my coffee rolling. I'm gonna make sure I'm
How
turned
we
up.
doing?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I just came back from practice, so having a bit of a snack and a coffee.
Yeah, well done.
Hmm.
So, man, Henrik, it's been a minute, man. How long was it since we've done our? It's been about a year. It feels like.
Not quite, but it should be 6 months or eight
Really?
months. I don't know. I don't remember when we did it actually.
You're now you're preaching to the choir, man. I don't remember yesterday sometimes. You're so
Yeah,
busy.
days are just messing up.
Hmm.
How have you been doing?
I've been well. We just finished the my high school season out here,
Right.
and I had a busy year, one of the better years here at Sky High and Fly, and I managed to get
Really?
four different kids to the state finals. So that was a good accomplishment. I haven't done that for about 5 years. We had three back in 2019, so 6 years ago, and managed to get two of them, on the podium, which was a really good year. This year we had four. I had three guys and one gal, and then man, it was up in Fresno, California, and the meet was about 104 degrees. It was super hot,
Oh,
and
really?
the kids, the boys in particular, jumped really well. There were 17 kids out of whatever the number was, about 30 something. 17 of them
Hmm.
made 2 meters, ish, like 198, like 6'6". So we had, when they were cutting the field to 12, there were actually 17 guys made 6'6". And so I think they raised it an inch at that point. And then, but they might have gone two. So
Nice.
I only had one guy make that, and he didn't make the final. So it was one of the more competitive state meets because I remember back in 2018, I had a young guy go up there
Yeah.
who had jumped like 208, and he didn't make the opening height, which was only like 6'3", and that would have made the final that year. So that was a really crappy year, in comparison. This year, 6'6" didn't even necessarily sniff the final. So, but anyway, it was good.
Crazy.
Uh, you
Good
know,
competition.
yeah, good competition, and the final actually, the guy that won only jumped 6'9" the next day, and I think it,
Six nine. All right.
I think the heat really took something out of it, some starch out of the kids. They weren't. It wasn't a
Are
lot.
they day after each other, or do you have a rest day in between? Or is it like a Friday, Saturday
Yeah, it
thing?
was a Friday, Saturday, and I remember that was particularly problematic for myself. The one year that I made the state meet was my senior year, and
Yeah.
yeah, we had a very similar one. My senior year, there were 13 guys that cleared 6'8". So at
Mhm.
203, we had
What age are we
13,
talking about? I don't know the
like
so
17, 18
so
usually.
that's some decent results actually.
Yeah, well, the guys that I was jumping against that year, there's a guy named John Morris that I didn't know at that
Mhm.
time. He went to Cal Berkeley, and he ended up
Yeah.
jumping like 7'7", in college. And
Oh,
I
damn.
only jumped against him a few times. He beat me at state in high school. College, my first year when I jumped second year when I jumped 7'2" for the first time, 218. He beat me on misses. I jumped against him again the one time I got to jump against Sotomayor right after he broke the world record. He came over to
All
UCLA,
right.
did a meet,
Yeah.
and I've got the finals, a little clipping. We used to clip things out of the newspaper back then before the the advent of the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I'm so mad because I don't think there's even any video of this stuff, but I got to watch Sotomayor go. He opened at 220. He went 220, 225, 230, 235. Boom, 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 boom. The four best jumps I've ever seen in my life, like 4.5 to
Nice.
5 inch clearances on everything,
Yeah.
And then
What
at
year was this?
this was like 1989. It
89.
was within a couple years after I had left UCLA finally. But I still, as an alumni, they invited me back. A lot of
Yeah.
great humbling stories. I told people the introductions there were great because they start off with Sotomayor. We're all standing in line, of course, and they're going across, and everybody's got this long list. It's like, here he is, the new world record holder, the world champion,
Mhm.
Olympic record, this and that, blah, 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 down the line. And I'm the very last guy. They get down to the very end, and they're like, and Troy Haynes. And I'm like, thank you very much. I'll be here all week. And it's like, nobody's going to go, hey, jump 222 his senior year. And he's number 4 on the all-time list at UCLA. It's like, no, no, no. Compared to all these guys, like Brian Stanton was in that field. And I trained with Brian and he jumped 7'8", went to the Olympics in 88. Lee
Yeah.
Bolton, my longtime teammate, 7'6", John Morris, 7'7". And every one of those guys finished in front of me. But in a field of about 15 guys, I actually came in sixth because I opened at 215 and made it. And so for
Oh,
whatever
really?
reason, that put me sixth. And then after that, it was literally like Stanton, Balkan, who else was in there? Conway, Hollis Conway jumped at that meet.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I jumped
Hmm.
against Hollis twice in my life. Once was at NC2A finals my senior year, and then this meet.
Yeah.
So, it was anyway, humbling, but at the same time, one
Nice.
of my favorite meets, and I got to see some amazing stuff. So I don't know how we
Yeah.
got sidetracked onto
Interesting.
that one. Oh no, my experience at the state meet, because you asked about the 2 days. And so
Yeah, we did.
I jumped
A
against John
little.
Morris. I jumped against a guy named Maurice Crumby, who had jumped 7'5" in high school. And I jumped against him for another couple of years because he went to Arizona and I was at UCLA. So,
Mm-hmm.
these were high flyers, and there was 13 of us, like I said, that made 6'8", and they decided to just take 13 instead of 12, which was nice. But the 1 day turnaround, came back the next day. I was crap the next day. I jumped
Yeah. Yeah.
two meters, and I think I came in ninth.
Yeah, that's rough.
So, well, you don't have any experience doing that. I mean, in high school, sometimes
No,
2 days in a row at practice, but not I don't like to do that to my kids a lot. And I don't, if you are, you're going low and you probably don't do high volumes, that kind of stuff.
I don't either. So but it's a necessity to train it once you have athletes that are going to that level. Like we have the European Championship under 20 and under 23, and
Hmm.
a lot of athletes can go there, but they need to practice the 2 day jumping. So for some of my athletes, we need to practice it because it's gonna
Yeah.
depend so much
You don't
on
really
it.
know
So.
how you're going to react until you try it,
uh,
right? So
uh,
it's
so
it's a different
for some
animal.
of my better athletes, they need to train it. So usually, like the summer leading up to a championship, we do maybe once per month. We do the back-to-back sessions with high jump.
It's
It's
smart.
rough though.
It's smart. Yeah, it is rough, and you got to do but it's also worthwhile. I mean, those of you out there, coaches and everything, we're talking with Henrik Thoms from Sweden, who finished his workday. I'm getting ready to start mine in a couple of hours here. I got some, athletes to train, and talking about to me that brings up the area of sports specificity. Where you're saying I need to train my athlete to operate in this particular set of circumstances, and the only way to do that is to kind of do it and see what it entails. Because not only what do you want to get accomplished the first day. If it's a 2 day competition, you got to make it to day two. So that's the first thing,
Right.
and you may have to jump extremely well, extremely
Yes.
high to get through the qualifier. And then, you know what? You're going to be stiff. You're going to be sore. There's other things you got to deal with. So when you do that, the stuff that we know now is fantastic, right? Like when I was in high school, if somebody would have said, hey, tonight, because your legs are going to be dead tomorrow. Okay. So
Yeah.
tonight you should be sitting in an ice bath from your hips down, to your feet for a good 15 minutes. I would have done it. Nobody told me this is 1982,
Yeah.
So I just went to bed, took a couple of aspirin, and when I woke up in the
Yeah.
morning, I had nothing.
Felt
I mean, I
crappy.
remember that
Yeah.
feeling. I just had
Yeah.
nothing. It was a nightmare. I was amazed I jumped 6'6". So
Yeah.
the way I felt, the negative ramifications of the way I felt, as a jumper, if there's those days you're just
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I mean, I got nothing. And as soon as you're in that negative mind space, you're done.
Yeah.
So it's
Done.
like,
You're done. Yeah.
unless your technical acumen is so good that you can get through that feeling, and maybe that's something, that we're talking about there, but, recovery and the mental aspects, what are you going to do the second day? How do you get prepared? And trying to save up your energy the night before, right? Don't waste a
Mhm.
lot of low height jumps, make
Chance.
everything on your first, all those things that we would
Mm.
train.
Mm. I
Mm.
agree.
So I've been seeing you prolifically posting on Instagram. Dude, you are on it all the time. I'm seeing these and the backflip drill, which
Mm.
I'm pretty sure you invented your particular version. I've got a
Mm.
growing folder with my own stuff included, of course, and then yours and some other athletes. And we did spend a minute, the last time we met talking about
Mm.
that position. And I should have
Mm.
downloaded it ahead of time so we could talk about it. But I am convinced, I think, as you are, that I've been trying to get away from um, dropping the hips ever,
Yeah.
like ever. I don't see a
That's
reason,
interesting.
because when you're up and over, the last thing in my estimation you want to do is drop your hips straight down.
Yeah.
So I see people in the high bridge, everything there. They're doing a, back arch hold.
And
Anybody
then
does
they do
that.
like that.
A lot of people do that, but what's the difference there is most people don't have their hands back here when they do that. Some, not many. But when you're in that position, I see a lot of coaches will do the drop. They
Yeah.
quick,
100%. I see
they're
it on
teaching
Instagram
them
all the time, and
quickly to try to pull their legs over, right? And I'm like, I
yeah.
don't think that's correct. I go, you should let your head get lower than your feet and just keep spinning, right? And then your hips
Yeah.
clear. And then if you decide to drop your hips at that point, it's over. But it's like if your rotation is good enough, you could literally land on your stomach,
Yeah. I
and
I
put your
agree.
hands down if you want. And I used the 2016 Olympics with Barshim, Bondarenko, and Druin because they're all doing it. They all
Mm.
spin so well
Yeah.
on top that they're literally landing on their hands and their knees and feet facing straight down and just standing
Yeah.
up. And
Hmm.
as they hit the pit, and I'm like, oh my God, the first time I saw that, I'm like, that's it. That's it.
Mm.
And when you look at Bondarenko, Bondarenko isn't the most beautiful layout kind of guy. He's not
No.
super bendy. He's not doing anything that exceptional, but he's running like an antelope. He's so
Yeah.
fast as he's coming around that corner that when he gets vertical and gets the spin started, you just wait and spin. And yeah, he reaches for his heel a little bit, but it's not
Mhm.
like you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, do you look at how great that position is?" Like, no, but you see the
No.
spin. The rotation is
Yeah.
outrageous, so it's like
He
that's the
creates a
hardest
lot
thing
of
to teach people.
rotation from
Mhm.
his run up. He really pushed through the curve, and then he just creates a tremendous amount of rotation. He doesn't have to be like super bendy, but
Yeah,
he just clears.
he's still
Just
spinning, and the spinning
yeah.
part, all he's got to do at that point, like we're talking about, is just basically stay in that position. Leave your hips up as
Yes.
high as they're going to be up, and when you spin,
Yeah.
I don't drop, just stay in
No.
that position and keep spinning.
Mm.
The hardest part about that, I think, is getting the athlete, it seems to me, I don't know if this is the case for you over there, Henrik, but I've
Mhm.
heard it from many of the pole vault coaches. And, I'm seeing it more and more with the high jumpers now. Generally over here, gymnastics and any kind of acrobatics tend to attract the shorter athletes because it's easier
Mhm.
for them to do all kinds of stuff, right?
Yes.
The shorter levers are amazing for gymnasts because they've got to do flips and, this and that and twists and it's all very precise and all that kind of stuff. And the longer limbs are just harder. You don't
Yeah.
see a lot of tall gymnasts, but
No.
divers a little bit different, right? So if you have acrobatics, you have that ability to control your body in the air, and you know where you
Mm.
are, and you're comfortable spinning backwards.
Yeah.
Now, not all high jumpers are. I don't know if you've had the same people. I have people that are, reaching behind them, looking like
Yeah.
afraid to fall on their backs.
Yes.
I'm
Uh,
like, hey, no, 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 no,
100%.
no. And you got to start doing the stuff that you're doing. Here, I'm going to flip you over and you got to just relax and land and roll, and you start to teach them, but I was
That's
controlling
interesting. So
forward.
basically, one of the first things I check with, especially developing athletes, like younger people, like 12, 13, 14, is to see if they can just fall back, right? Because from birth they're gonna have the sit down reflex, and if they
Mhm.
haven't trained it or they haven't actively like grown their confidence in the like just falling, they will
Yes.
tend to like sit down. So that's the first thing I do with every athlete that I get on the high jump pit. I just train them to just fall back.
Hmm.
99% of the time people can do it flawlessly, right? But
Right.
then you have one that you need to actually train to do it.
Right.
And then from there we have this foam pit. I think you have it in the States as well, where we try to like get comfortable on landing
Right.
and before we do it on the high jump pit, because then you need to have some kind of awareness to not land on your head, right? But
Right.
so we train on landing in a safe environment in a foam pit, which
Right.
is an amazing progression, and then progress into to athletes who can actually benefit from the toss that I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because the toss simulates the rotation, which takes a decent amount of speed on your curve,
Yes.
right? And then,
Yes.
but staying in that position is the hard part. It was interesting because you and I had talked about it, about completing the flip. And then I started watching your stuff and I'm like, yep, Henrik's at work at it. I could see it because you're really flinging them back. And when they hold, a lot of times they can spin all the way around. And I had
Yes.
one gal this year that I trained, Lydia from Yorba Linda High School, and she was a former flyer for gymnastic or for cheerleading.
Really.
So
Cheerleading.
she's a
Right.
flyer. She's one of those ones they throw up on top and they're standing there in the
Yeah.
hold positions or whatever, but
Amazing.
flips and
Yeah.
backflips and. So she had some training in that. And so we're standing there on the pit one day and she's, how jumpers are. She just stands up in the middle of the pit and just does a backflip tuck. Perfect, up and around, boom, like no problem. Lots of air. And I looked at her and I go, could you jump up and do that, but then hold the layout and land on your stomach? And she goes, oh, like this, and goes boom and just does it perfectly, right?
Yeah.
I've got it on film. I should have prepped and put it on here, but it shows you can see a spot on the wall behind her. She's in a
Mhm.
perfect high bridge as she goes around because she's a high jumper. She knows what the position is. So she goes
Right.
up, hammers the spot, and flips right around. And you can see the perfect circles just spin and
Yeah.
all the way around. And then she lands on her stomach. And I'm like, there is no way that she would hit a bar. Now, it's a little bit different because obviously you're moving
Yeah.
as you're spinning. So
Yes.
there's that aspect of it, which is, everybody's got to learn how to do that. But I was
Of
just like,
course.
this is it. This is what Henrik and I were talking about. If if I could train them to do that, because so many of them both A, start the rotation too early, and B, drop their hips straight down. And I'm always like, because when they start too early, of course, they have to hold it longer. And you always hear that, right? I don't know if you hear it, but the uninitiated and untrained over here, they'll come and they'll tell me, they go, if I could have held that longer, I'm like, yeah, but you started too early. So even if you do wait, a lot of times you just get stuck. You stall,
Hmm.
no matter how long
Yeah.
you hold it, because you're in such a bad position by the time you do get your head and your feet level that you do have to drop your hips really fast because you're kind of done at that point. You can't continue to spin. And so I'm like, it's not really the issue. It's like you're in a position. I tell so many of them, I go, your layout position's fine. It's just
Mhm.
happening too early. You can't do it
Yes.
while you're still going up. I'm going to show this to you. I prepped it, so let me know. I'm sure you've
Yes.
seen this,
Stalling is a great word for it, actually. I've never used that word or the
right?
Swedish word, but stalling is a great word to describe what you just said.
Yeah, don't you? I mean, you just see it. It's like I tell people this story sometimes. I tell my kids, I go, look, the first time your coach jumped 7 feet when he was in college, I did it from a
Mhm.
standing five step. Okay.
Mhm.
And then I went to at that meet, I went to 220. I made 215 for the first time standing five. I went to 220 and I was getting up and I could get up to the bar and I'd be in position, but I was just didn't have enough speed because the standing five step, it's just hard to get enough going. So I go, it's easier to get vertical off a slower speed, right? The slower you're going. If I'm demonstrating it at age close to 62 now, I just, I do a three step, I lean over and I hammer back into the curve. And I'm going to go
Hmm.
relatively straight. And I go, it's easy to do that. To go from one step if you want to hit vertical. That's easy. But
Hmm.
when you're sprinting at a high speed, and even if you're leaning and doing all your stuff right, it's really, really hard to hit vertical. It's not impossible. There's
It
all
is.
kinds of great athletes that do it. I've got videos of Tamberi, to me, looking like he's hitting what I call inside out vertical. As he's leaving the ground, he's actually still pointing away from the bar, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I go, that's the ace gold plus standard. But,
Right.
vertical's tough. But I'm like, the slower you're going, yeah, you get up. But if you are going slower, it's harder to get into the pit. And you get that
Mhm.
stall point eventually where, that rotation is not going to happen for whatever the particular height is just because you're not moving fast enough. Right. So I don't know where that term occurred to me a long time ago, but here's your mentor doing that famous demonstration video with the guy hitting the stick against the ground.
The steak, yeah.
Yeah. So
That
this
clip
is
went viral the other week
Yeah, and this
again.
this stuff is amazing to me because there's so many things I show about this. Number one, I do think he's either slightly inside out vertical here, but at the very least, he's going straight up, as you can see the bar, the standard
Mhm.
here in relation, because this is the straight down the standard shot. You can't even see the bar. But I noticed two things in this. The knee up and across is amazing. And it looks to me almost like it's more across than up, if that makes sense. But it's like he drives it so far across and it's back into the curve, and that really slows everything down. I'm thinking about writing a law, Henrik, of the law of 45s. That knee drive
Yeah.
angle here with his lower leg compared to the other leg is at about a 45-degree angle. And then if you watch this at the very top, and this is what we're talking about, number one, he doesn't throw his head back until it's right above the bar, right? He doesn't throw it into the bar, but he's over. Now you can see him pull his shoulders and his head straight down. And so that's that classic high bridge. So when you look at that, I go, first of all, he left the knee alone forever and a day, right? He drove it up, rode it up. You never see him pop his hips or anything. And then he, waits to do the head back. Okay, we had the phenomenal knee across here. And you look at it here, it just kept going, right? It's not just, I tell my athletes, like, I'd be happy if I can get your knee to block my view, but it's almost like his other hip is blocking your view. The right hip is blocking the view of the left hip, and leg. And then what else I noticed, the long knee ride without anything else thrown back there. And then I use this all the time for show the kids the cycling because when you watch him run, right, here's what I
Hmm.
call that perfect slide step with the left foot because he doesn't overcycle that one because you're trying to get it on the ground way out in front of you. But if you look at
Yeah.
every time his legs hit the ground, his body's lined up with his leg. So like right
Yes.
here, he's
This
perfectly straight. This leg and the body's pretty close to the same angle. And then you see
doesn't
the same
lose.
thing again here, right? Pretty straight. Now, the upper body's a little far ahead, but he's flying. I know he's very fast on his attack. So it's hard to
Yeah.
line it up completely. And the other thing is the cycling is pristine because when you see it here, his right foot is there, but when you see it push up, it disappears. Like it's going
Yeah.
behind him. You can see it. It's kicking him in the butt, right? Basically, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then the knee, that's why the knee's so short, that the leg is short and it flies across like no problem.
No.
So there's that. And I also love the fact right here, the heel strike there on the penultimate. And
Mhm.
then there, so I was taught by my little Romanian guy to hit heel toe, last two at high speed because it helps the lean back, right?
Yeah.
It's harder, especially for the single armors, I think, to get the first one at high speed
Mhm.
because you're
Mhm.
on the balls of your feet pushing. So it's
Mhm.
really hard. And I don't notice who's the Russian gal that retired just a few years ago? She used to win everything. She seemed all
What's her name? I
oh
know who you.
I know I can never remember her name, and because I remember I was always like trying to remember how to say it, And then, but she
Yeah.
won everything for quite a while, and she was
And she got
consistent,
married, and then she changed her because her name was Kuchina, I think,
right?
before, and
Mm.
then after she married, she. Oh, continue. Sorry.
But yeah, we're thinking along the same lines. But she was the one of the few that I thought she was kind of on her heels the whole way, and I just thought she was really,
Lasitskinnya.
really, really. Yes, thank you, Lysa Skinnya. Yeah, she's the one that looks as she's running like she's on her heels the whole time,
Mm.
but most of
Yeah.
them are up on the balls of their feet, right? And so that was the one thing Elias taught me was, to get that last heel toe, heel toe. So there's so many things I love watching about Stefan because he does effortlessly. It seems like, so many of the things that I was, you know, at my lower execution level taught how to do. Um,
So
so
I would
good.
like an opinion on the heel toe
Yeah,
thing,
tell me.
especially at the takeoff, because so I have athletes struggling with the like if they come in with the heel like this
Hmm.
and then plant, they
Right,
lose too much momentum, right? But if
right,
you take a look at Stefan, is he's more efficient because his takeoff was still 140 milliseconds, right?
right.
But a lot of athletes that I coach, I kind of cue them to like hit the ground like this
Hmm.
because then they're gonna have a quicker takeoff time. But some athletes just came in like this and they lose everything.
Right.
So what's your opinion on that? Because when we're talking heel toe
Yeah. I
jumping, right?
it's funny because, here we're getting to the real brass tacks, which is, how long do you want to be on the ground? Because we know all about impulse, which is,
Yeah.
get on and off. But at the
Mhm.
same time, what are we always preaching and teaching is that last step is both your longest and your fastest step. So when you
Yeah.
do that, it actually does increase your ground contact time a little bit. If you were to shorten up your last step, then you would get on and off the ground quicker, but you might not get the launch angle right
Right.
because
Yeah.
if your foot is closer to you, it's hard to stop you and
Yeah.
keep you
You're
from
having
going
a
through
long
because
flight.
that's the long
Yeah.
jumpers tend to go longer short, right? Long
Right.
short, and we're going
Yeah.
short longer. And so because we're
Yes.
trying to get more air. So it's like I think there's a little bit of a trade-off. Like I'm trying
Mhm.
to teach my guys, like I go, you're an airplane going straight down a runway and then you're going to do a bank turn left or right and go
Mhm.
around, and then there's a ramp going up. I want you to picture just boom, and then hit the ramp, bank left, and hammer that knee into that direction, right? And then the heel toe, I always thought was more for that lean back angle, and it does depend on the speed. So that we're talking about a lot of different things. So I think it's one of those things. I hear exactly what you're saying, and this
Yeah.
is the beautiful thing about the high jump. I think everybody's a little bit different depending on
Yes.
reaction time and your level of explosiveness and the speed training that you've been doing and on and on and on. Because
Mhm.
trying to transfer speed into lift. And so you've got both elements. What you're talking about to me is a speed thing. And I agree. If I want to run fast, I should be up on my toes and, at a bare minimum, either hitting the pad of the foot first,
Mhm.
and trying not to be flat-footed so much. But, like you're saying, there's a trade-off because I've got to run fast, but I also have to jump. And nobody puts their foot on the ground on the pad on that takeoff foot. So almost universally, there's a heel toe on the last step. So what I'm talking about is a transition, right, between one to the other. So as you're a sprinter and you're
Mhm.
transitioning into being a jumper, if you're going to go from hitting on the pads of your feet every time, and this is where we get into shin splints and all that other stuff, right? Because some people are pointing their toes and some people have mastered pulling their toes up. So if you can pull those toes up and you're up on the pads, you can really be pretty fast and explosively fast. But when it comes to that last step, it's going to be a heel strike. So you've got the pretty much a radical juxtaposition between the two, right? One is at one extreme and the other's at the other. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, it's the way that I've thought about it all these years, because Elias used to just preach it to me. He's like, hey, it's heel toe, period. It's like, okay. And once I saw it enough, I was like, to me, it made sense as far as getting the lean back angle right and all that. And for the now, see, and you're a speed guy. So I think it's really, really hard for the speed guys to go heel toe, which was why I was amazed. I'd never noticed it before today as I queued it up that he does very easily go heel toe on his second to last
Yeah,
step.
really
So,
fast.
and he's a fast single armor, whereas the
Hmm.
slower, more power oriented double armors
Hmm.
never seem to have a problem going heel toe. Because if they're going to do
No.
anything, they're going to lean back and jump
Yeah.
straight up at slower
Yeah.
speed. Because, I remember some of those names I'm telling you that Maurice Crumby, the kid I jumped against, who
Hmm.
was three-time state champ here in California, jumped 7.5 in high school, and then went to college and, stayed around there. I think he's 4.5, 5. I never really traced his career. He was a year behind me, and then when he went to Arizona, he still just routinely kicked my ass. So it was like, it was one of those things. It was like, um, I mean, he carried speed, but he was definitely, I mean, he was all about that. He would drive those arms up, drive the knee up, go straight up, and then really hammer that layout. I mean, he would just have to pull his shoulders down, get his hips up and spin because he just wasn't running as fast, and he
Yeah.
would convert that speed into lift, but it's just harder to spin around. So I think those guys are very usually easier to teach that whole heel toe. And I agree for a single armor, I don't think it's a deal killer. If you
No.
watch all of them, there's going to be plenty of them that can go, flat strike like you're talking about, and then the heel
Yeah,
toe. Everybody does the heel toe on the last one. So,
they do.
like I said, Lysa Skenia, I'm pretty sure when I watched her the first time, I was like, she's running on her heels the whole way. And I don't think that, I think it means you're not going to be quite as fast, but I don't think speed was the better part of her jump, you
No.
know. So, well, what else have you been working on, Henrik? Because I've seen the layout stuff, and then you're still training Stefan's son, right? How's he doing?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but he did a 779 in the long jump. Did you see
Really?
that?
No, I did not.
Yeah,
Was that
with
on your
zero
feet? Did
zero
you put
long
it?
jump training.
Awesome. How far
Yeah,
is that? Feet and inches? That's got to be
I
24,
have
5 feet.
no idea. What?
It's out there.
Yeah, let me do the conversions real quick. Uh,
25, 26.
so it's yeah, you're spot on it. It's 25 and 7 inches.
It's really good. Yeah, for a high jumper doing the long jump, right? It's pretty good.
So basically, with Melvin, he's doing a lot of own programming, actually doing what he believes in, which is a really good way of moving forward for him because he's been struggling a lot. And Stefan and Melvin are very open about the struggle, right? So
Hmm.
it's nothing hidden. Um, he, his high jump has been really struggling, actually.
Hmm.
He is his best jumps are good, but he's not reaching the level that he wants to.
Hmm.
I think his season's best is 215,
Hmm.
and so that's right above 7 feet.
Yeah.
And he's doing the national team championships on Friday, which
Hmm.
is a good opportunity for him to jump really high. So we'll see. I think he will manage to clear up PB this outdoor season, but he's been struggling a lot, especially with when it comes to happiness and jumping, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's why he did long jump because he was like, "Oh, I'm feeling long jump today," and then he just had some good wind. It
Hmm.
was approved wind, so it was like 1.7 wind, but
Right.
779. He had a super amazing series where he did like 770, 771, 776, 779. So
Wow.
really far,
Yeah.
really good. So basically, that long jump results is probably better than his season's best in high
Yeah.
jump, right? So
Interesting.
yeah,
So is he thinking, long, how old is he?
so he's 20,
20. So
turning
he's
turning turning 21.
okay. So now if you're 20 or under, you can do under 20, or do you have to literally be under 20 to compete?
Yeah, you have to be under 20, but there's a
Under
U23
23,
European
right?
Championship. Yeah,
So
so he qualified for both high jump and long jump for the U23 Championship,
Mhm.
which is in 1 month.
Okay. And yeah, that's quite an accomplishment. It's kind of rare, right? The two seems like triple jump and high jump go together better than long. And
Yeah,
but depends on the type of guy, of course. If you're a speed guy, you may be better suited for the long. So I know at the Olympic level, Javon Harrison was the
yeah,
first
right.
guy to get into the high jump and long jump final in like over 100 years.
Yes,
So
crazy.
it's a rarefied
So
air.
yeah, so I actually like speaking of Melvin, because I like to get on a second opinion on his takeoff velocity. Because
Mhm.
so speaking of takeoff times, ground contact times,
Right.
so Melvin is, in my opinion, which is crazy, but I've talked to some biomechanics about it, about this. His ground contact time might be too freaking fast.
Right.
So
He's not getting enough
he's
push off the ground. Yeah.
no. So his ground contact time in his high jump takeoff is less than 115 milliseconds. So
Right.
around 110 milliseconds.
Hmm.
And so the thing is, because we me, Stefan, and Melvin, we're all wired on being as fast as possible in the takeoff, right?
Right.
Probably you too. Like we
Sure.
want to be quick,
Absolutely.
but he's too quick. And whenever I figured that out, that his rate of force development probably doesn't match his takeoff speed,
Right.
ground contact time. That's it's hard
Yeah.
to understand that you can be so that fast.
Right.
So I think one of the reasons that we need to, especially when you compare him doing his hurdle hops, where his ground contact time is like 170 of uh, between 170 and 220,
Right.
he's not really training his high
Hmm.
jump
Right.
his specific jump,
Yeah.
which is so that just I just realized this a couple of weeks ago.
Hmm.
Like his hurdle hops, they don't transfer to his high jump,
Right.
but
Right.
he
But
almost has a the same ground contact in long jump as he does in high jump.
right. Yeah, that's so the issue isn't the speed. I think the thing is the study is the simple part, right? We need to track the ground time with the overall acceleration and speed. Both of those are important. So, for those of you that are listening, sometimes coaches use the terms interchangeably, which I don't agree with. You can be fast and yet slowing down, right? So that would be deceleration. If I'm fast, but I start to slow down, everybody knows that doesn't work in a high jump.
In
So
style high
you
jump,
would be accelerating. So you can be really fast, but slowing down. And you can be really
right?
slow, but speeding up. And I
Yeah,
would give the advantage to the person who's speeding up, depending, you can get away with some things sometimes with the deceleration. Everybody's made a jump, where they decelerated into the takeoff, but it's like at its highest levels, you want to accelerate. So, but
yeah,
we're also talking about, speed, that ground contact time. We need to look at the relationship between the amount of time in the air and how long you spend on the ground, like you're saying,
yeah.
because if I'm going so fast that I can't finish my takeoff mechanics, then I get in trouble. Like I've trained some athletes. You'll see this. Okay, I see arms up here, right? So one arm, you're in arm closer to the bar up, this one here, and people go, okay, well, this arm's higher than this arm. I'm like, I don't like either of them because I would rather get them here if I can
Mm.
at high speed. So the trade-off is how much can I get? If you watch anybody who's a double armor, a volleyball player, a basketball player trying to touch the top of the rim or jumping up and dunking with both hands coming over the head,
Mm.
you'll see some of those guys get those hands way up. I've got videos of athletes getting the arms up. And so I'm like, if you can do it at high speed, I'm like, I'm all about getting these guys all the way up if you can. But once you're off the ground, they got to come back down, or you got to connect your lead arm to your heel, whatever it is you have to do to get smaller in the air, right? So I keep teaching go from tall to small when you're horizontal, when you're starting to get
Right.
up towards all your joints lining up like you're laying on the couch. I go,
Mm.
now's the time to get into that noodle position, not before, if you can. So, but the idea is getting on and off the ground is important, but if you can't get that knee to go all the way across, right? You can't get the hands all the way up. You can't get that, I call it synergy, right? Like they all have to happen quickly
That's
at that
yeah,
point. And it would be ideal. I don't know the math. This is just my feel as a jumper. It's ideal when they all peak at the same time, right? Right as your toes leaving the ground, your knee should be all the way across, Your hand should be all the way up, but bam, and you're off the ground,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
So if we get that, because I always tell people, I go, if they're separate for any reason, I go, you got all these little pluses. You get a plus knee drive, you got a plus arm drive, you've got a plus of your left leg hitting the ground and pushing. All those things add up. But I go, but if it's adding, that suggests to me that they're slightly off time. You go, okay, this is a two, and that's a four, and that's a seven. So you go, okay, what does that
Yeah.
give you? That gives you an 11, let's say. But if you time them out, so they all happened at the same time, then I think it goes two times four times seven. I think it
Mm,
multiplies the closer they
mm,
are together. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
They seem to get like an exponential return when the
yeah.
timing's right. Everybody's had that feeling of, oh my God,
Yeah.
that was just
What just
boom.
happened?
And there's other
Yeah.
times like, it wasn't quite there. So
Mm,
what we're talking about, I need to see the numbers. My inherent thought process would say, yeah, you can come up and get it on off the ground really quickly, like you're saying. And it's almost like a boxer throwing a jab, a quick jab, boom,
yeah.
like boom. Okay, that's good, but a jab doesn't knock you out. A jab is
No.
set up for something else. So it's like when you want to throw the knockout blow, it's gonna be a little bit slower with a lot more
No.
force behind it, and it's gonna take
Yes.
longer, but at the same time you get more out of it. So it's like, we need to do that. I think what you're saying, we're talking about the same thing from different angles. You want the speed, but correspondingly, it has to be the correct speed for you to finish the takeoff. And we both know that the longer that leg gets, there's a trade-off. If I slide that slide step way out in front and get that way lean back angle, like to me, it looks sometimes like Tamberry's when his foot is way
Mhm.
out here, like his head
Yeah.
is 3 or 4 feet behind his foot. And I'm like,
Mm,
that's a long way for it to stop and then go up. And that's
yeah.
going to increase your ground time, but it's still going to
Yes.
be fast. So
Yeah.
there's the trade-off to
Yeah, I did a video exactly about that. Like if you lean back and if you increase the lean, because I would love to experiment that on Melvin to like, because his lean isn't great. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why he
Yes,
doesn't
I
get the
agree a
vertical.
million percent.
So if he could just lean a little bit more, then maybe get his ground contact time to 130, 140, 150, then
Yes,
he's gonna jump higher.
but it's not going to be because he's slow. It's going to be
No,
because the angle. The angle is going to increase the ground reaction time. It's not going to be that he's a slow reactor or that he's
right.
not running fast. It's going to be
No.
that you've got the extra time to swing up through there
Mm,
simply because
right.
of the angles and the physics.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's the issue because my
I agree.
contention for the longest time has been we need to do this. This is where you and I working together would be great because I would have cameras at like that, almost the angle that we have on the video of Stefan doing the drill, but maybe 5 degrees over. Like I like to
Yeah.
see, I don't like that straight down the bar shot. So I would
No.
move maybe 3 or 4 degrees off just so I can see the takeoff mechanics, right? Both sides, so you can get both guys, left and right side. Then every once in a while, I do like that camera angle that's looking in between the two last steps, so I can see how
Yeah.
long it is, right? If I'm looking straight down the bar, it's hard to tell how long that step is because it's
Very hard.
behind them, and so your
Yes.
your angle's all screwed up. So there are times when I like to swing way around and see what that length of step is and see how what I call the straight lean back angle goes. Like if you're just it looks the same as a long jumper. If you're running and that foot is, 1 foot to the other is always going to be a straight line. Now, when we're running a curve, the 2 feet might not line up, but you're still going to draw a straight line between a heel strike and a heel strike. But we both know
Mm,
when you put 5 of those in a row, you've got a curve in the high jump. Whereas you do 5 in a
yeah.
row with long jump, you're just running in a straight line. Now,
Yes.
and I know also that the long jumper does have to lean back a little, even though they're running very fast. They do have to lean back some. So that's my analogy there is like, okay, I need to see how great that lean back angle is. And there's got to be a range of good to bad. I don't think,
Mm,
I think too vertical obviously is not going to be good enough. There
no.
could be somebody who could lean back too far. I don't know that I've ever seen that as far as a lean back. And then, of
No.
course, we're talking
I
about
think Brandon
increasing
Stark
angle.
might be the closest one then, because
Yeah.
his lean back is crazy.
Yeah. He leans
But
for someone who's running that fast. Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
if you watch his old stuff, he used to do a 16 step approach.
Yes.
Still 14,
Nuts.
and when he gets
Yeah.
going, it looks to me like he's at full speed within about 2 steps. He
Yes.
he really gets going, right?
Mhm.
He's one of my favorites to watch because he's another
I
guy
love him.
I use all the time when I'm preaching to my single armors. I'm like, look, watch this drill. I've got one drill of his where he runs and he goes that 1, 2, 3, boing, 1, 2, 3, boing.
Yeah, and then
He goes one, two,
mm,
three, bam, and he hits the knee across, and the bar looks like it might be at a 183 or even lower, but the knee goes up and across, and he just leaves it up and just spins. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't lay out. He doesn't throw his head back. He just spins around, and I'm like, you can create rotation, you guys, with the knee drive and the speed without you trying to help everything out by cranking your head back, early in the process. I'm like, I'm trying to teach them to spin over the bar with the knee up instead
yeah,
of, because I think the physics to me, it looks like if I leave the knee alone, right as I'm getting to where I'm going to start turning anyway, to me, okay, pop your hip, do whatever you need to do. That's fine. But if I do that earlier, then I'm taking a significant part of my body mass and my center of mass and driving it the other direction,
yeah,
driving it down below the bar before I pull it back. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Inherently, it doesn't make sense. Leave your center of mass as high as you can and spin that.
yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Don't
Yeah,
change.
I agree.
So yeah, we're hitting all across here. I love that. What was the other dream thing that I want? Because I hear you talking about all the time is force plates, right?
Yeah.
Some way to measure how much force is being applied for how long. And
Yes.
the problem with that is you can usually get one at takeoff. Maybe
Yes.
we could get two, depending on the sensitivity and the size and everything, but then you got to put it underneath, right? And you got to have it all wired correctly and,
Mm,
do what you got to do there because, force plates are sensitive things and they're not cheap. But I would love to have that, man. Force plates, about two, three different camera angles, a
mm,
vertical or a sky cam,
yeah.
get a
Yeah.
drone up there or just a camera that's anchored but above so you can see the shape of the curve. That's another
We
thing.
do that. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
This is something I'm curious to hear your take on. What I could show you videos
Hmm.
of what I'm going to call the foot plant angle, right? So when a guy go heel to toe on my takeoff foot, I can either, and you can go through a range, you can line up with the bar, okay? Heel strike lined up perfectly parallel to the bar. You can start angling it in, right? So we'll say a zero is parallel. If I start turning my foot towards the pit and going across my body a little bit, then Dwight Stones, I've got a text from Dwight on Instagram. I brought up the question and he chimed in, which I found interesting. And he said 45 degrees is optimal. And I was like, I was taught, either learned it first and was taught later. Elias was always fine with parallel. I don't think it was right for me when I look back at it, and I wished I'd changed it because I've seen some jumpers operate really well. And I was taught, if your foot is angled towards the back left corner of the pit, as me being a left footer coming around, if I'm pointing at that back left corner, I think it's harder to get my knee across simply because my hips are turned the wrong way. So if I get my foot plant to parallel, it's a lot easier to get that knee across, but it's also hard to keep your upper body from swinging across the other way. So I think there's a trade-off, right? If I can lean back more like a high or long jumper and I line my foot up in the very direction that I'm going, then I think it's going to be easier to go up and hit vertical, but it might be harder to get my back to the bar, right? That's the trade-off. And I've got,
So
go ahead.
I actually have a pretty strong opinion on the foot angle thing.
Good. Let me hear it.
So I would say to never ever have your foot parallel to the bar.
Yeah.
Never ever, especially from a physical therapy standpoint.
Tough on the ankle.
Just the what do you call it? Like if to keep high jumping for a long while. I don't
Yeah.
know the English word for it, but
Longevity of your career. Yeah,
longevity,
longevity.
exactly. So just from that aspect alone, you need to do it. But so you can see, especially like very young developing athletes, they tend to jump higher if they put their feet parallel to the bar because in my opinion, they find it easier to just pop up vertically if they
Right.
can really do that. But they don't have the speed for it to become um, dangerous yet.
Mhm.
But if they
Right.
learn that pattern and then they come to me 3 years later, I must spend like half a year fixing that because I'm not doing
Yeah.
parallel jumping. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so so if you take a look at Melvin's takeoff, for example, he's on the verge of being too straight. He's
Hmm.
actually like I think he has 45 degrees, so he has a close to optimal takeoff angle on the foot, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But some jumps he's actually like turning it towards the pit even more.
47, 48. Yeah. Maybe 50. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Then
Yeah.
it starts to get dangerous
Sure.
in the twisting. So
Yes.
if he puts his foot right in front of him and he's going across like this,
You can
then it's
twist your
dangerous.
knee. Yeah.
Yeah.
If the timing's wrong, you get the knee moving too fast. Yeah.
Yes. So
I can see all that.
I'm some jumps I'm like really gulping and like that's close.
Right. Well,
uh,
I'll do this. I got to dig it out of here. I'm still working on getting my files of all my stuff that I use to argue, and I'm using the elites in their own videos. Where you're like, look at this. You just can't deny it.
yeah.
You know who Anika
No,
McPherson was? Do you remember
of
Anika?
course. Yeah, she
She's
follows me on Instagram.
right. She's awesome. She's a pixie, right? She's 5'4" maybe, and
Yeah.
she's 110 pounds dripping wet. I don't know. She's just a dynamo, right? Her
Yeah.
angle, if you looked at it, it's 60 degrees, if it's anything. She literally, and Henrik, her curve width can only be like 4 feet or 2 feet or something.
Yeah.
I've got video of her running indoor, and you can see the
I've seen
lane
it.
lines on the sprint,
Yes.
and then you see her come over like a lane line at the I mean,
Yeah.
it's not what you would call a curve. It's a straight line with a tiny bend in it. And it's like, and when she
I
hits it,
don't.
it's got to be a 60-degree angle. And
Yeah.
she manages to
But
get
she's
the knee up
flying.
and across, and
Mhm.
she manages to get that arm up, and she gets complete turn back to the bar,
Yeah.
and then outrageous rotation out of all of that. And I'm just like,
Yes.
now I know, and you know that that's not going to work. Like for your guy,
No. No.
that's
No.
not
No.
going to
No.
work. For me, that wouldn't work because I'm like, you're a hurdler. If you run
Mm.
with your shoulders perpendicular or parallel to
Mm.
the bar, you got to do a 180 at the
Mm.
takeoff. And like you're saying, maybe I'm going to tear my knee to shreds as I'm trying to get around. Now,
Mm.
I think by the time you roll up onto your toe, you're going to spin and pirouette off of your toe while your knee's driving you around. But you could see that maybe one time where you didn't get through there that fast, maybe you could tear it up. But I
Yes.
think there's that, like that impulse you're saying too. Maybe that's longer. I would be interested to see, but I would be willing to bet as we get more and more towards that 45 being optimal. And you and I are in agreement, complete agreement. I think 45 is probably that one that's right dead bang in the middle, perfect. She got away with the 60, and I think it's size and speed and weight dependent because a heavier, faster athlete is going to have trouble getting turned all the way. So it's,
Yeah. Same with this. If we take a look at a jumper right now, an American as well, Vashti Cunningham, she does
Mhm,
the same as Anika McPherson, in my opinion. She has a very narrow curve. I watched her live
mhm.
at Stockholm Diamond League the other week, and she also basically has 4 feet out like a lane, just
Yeah.
as you said,
Well, she's too tall for
Anika.
that, I
But
think.
she's
She needs a
also
bigger
like
turn.
she's tall, but she's very tiny, and I think she
Mhm.
could handle it. Maybe she's a little bit wider than
Yeah.
McPherson, of course, but I think that the theory of the smaller, very, very light jumpers can handle
Mhm.
it. But
Yeah.
as soon as you go up into like 125,
Yeah.
130, maybe like
Yeah.
140 pounds, then
Sure.
you're,
Yeah, well, she's tall though. She's like 6'4", so I'm willing to bet she's got to be a little heavier than Anika, but I agree with you. That's an interesting question. I mean, we could have a whole dissertation on why isn't Vashti Cunningham jumping 7 feet? I mean, she has to have the absolutely perfect body type.
mm,
At her
mm,
weight, at her weight, she runs beautifully, I think. I think that high cycling technique is fine. I've seen her drive her knee across, all this other stuff, and I'm always just like, why hasn't she jumped, you know, a lot higher?
watching her live, it made sense. Like she doesn't have the ability to really explode vertically. I think she needs a wider curve. I think it's
Yeah.
that easy actually. Because
Yeah.
if she did, because she's just running like towards the bar and just a little on the side, she doesn't have like the curve.
Yeah.
And watching her live, I watched it with some high jump knowledgeable people, and they all said the same thing. They were like, if she would just run a curve, she would probably pop off
Yeah.
10 centimeters.
Well, this
It's
this is
interesting
my
and
way of looking
frustrating to
at
see,
it.
actually.
I have this what I call it the three lean principle. Okay, and
Hmm.
you can pick at it, and I love having guys like you pick at it. So when I demonstrate this to the kids. I go, look, that same angle that we're looking at with Stefan here. You know, as you're coming in, and you get this, and here he is, bam, bam. Now that's pretty close to parallel, right? That foot plant. Now he
Can't
may be
see what you're
going
showing now, actually.
as he's hitting right here. I know, is it hard to see on your end? I know this is as big as I can make it over
I know it by heart, so I don't need to. I don't
here.
need to see it,
Yeah.
but I can.
It's relatively close to parallel, I'm going to argue, right? It's definitely not at a 45. Because
No, it's not that at a 45, but I wouldn't say that it's necessarily parallel, right?
yeah, it's a
It's
tough
just,
call here because it's just maybe it's the angle, but
yeah.
first of
I
all, you
think
see,
his takeoff. So this is the bar right here. His takeoff is usually like, like this and
uh-huh,
not like this. So
yeah,
and it's definitely not like Melvin does, like this,
right.
but Stefan was more like this.
Yeah, I can see that too because as you put the foot down, the roll to the side kind of looks like it's
Yeah.
changing the foot plant angle, even though it's not, right? So because
Yes.
you do have that side roll effect as
Yeah.
you hit on the,
Yes.
inside, you go outside to inside on your takeoff foot,
Uh,
right? And that always, if you
yes.
see that done at high speed from directly behind it, always looks like somebody's rolling their ankle, where you're like, oh my God, they're gonna
100%.
break their leg, at high speed. But the part that I'm interested in that I lost the video when I pulled you back up. Where did it go? It's gotta be down here somewhere. Is that it? No. All right, never mind. Such a dinosaur. I'll be. Oh wait. I think I found it. Is there it? Knee across. Um, what was the point that I was getting to? As we're running on that 45. Okay, so here is at heel strike, and let's say it's 30 degrees. Okay.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I show my athletes, I go, look, there are actually three leans going on here. Okay. What I call that long jump, straight lean back angle, where I'm just tilting the wings of the plane back, right? Right before takeoff. So the heel toe and the lean back. And we both know this isn't the right angle to see it, but it's being exhibited here because Stefan's head is not as close to us as his foot is. His head is
Yeah.
far back. He's leaning back,
Yes.
right?
He
So there's
is.
a specific angle that you can look at. This is the wrong shot. To get
Yeah.
that angle, you have to swing around. Then there's this distance, right? So you're watching the cursor. If I draw a line straight up from his foot, his head is over here a certain amount. Both again, if you're looking at that foot as the spot, it's behind it to the left now, like to our right, to his left. His head is tilted that direction because of, and you could argue, oh, it's the shape of the curves, whatever. I'm like, no, it's basically another way of looking at the lean back angle, right? Because if I'm looking straight down his leg and you go, oh, it's straight behind him here, it's a terrible angle. So I can't tell the difference between lean back and lean left, but I think there's a little bit of both. Okay. And simply because we're in a three-dimensional reality. Okay. So if I see, and I'll show the kids, I go, look, here's me leaning back. And I'll just hold the same position. I go, here's me leaning back at parallel to the bar. I go, when you look at me, you can't see from your angle that I'm leaning back. It's very difficult
Oh,
for you to see.
yeah.
But you're also not going to see any lean to the left. If I'm over here leaning straight back at a zero foot plant parallel, you're not going to see any lean back or left. As I start to swing that foot around, you start to see both. And you'll see more and more and more as I go from 10 to 15 to 45. At a 45, when I'm leaning back, if you look at it, you can see there's a lean back. And you can also see, well, his head is over here to the right of his foot. It's going to go this way at takeoff, right? And that's the second part of it, but it's not all of it because the plane also banks. So
Okay.
as I'm turning through there, running my curve, I get what I call as the third of the three-dimensional leans, which is to me, again, if I could get those shoulders, and here we'll pull up the shot of Stefan again, right at heel strike, right? And instead of looking at the foot at heel strike here and the lower leg, which is all fascinating to me and all that, but we draw a line straight back through here and we said, yep, that's a lean back. And it's also based on this foot, a certain amount of degrees, right? And here I'm going to guess about in the 30s, which is really pretty good at high speed. It's got to be
Yeah.
about 30-degree lean to that side. The other lean I find of interest is this one. If you can find his shoulders and you draw that line, that angle across, I got to do the math, but I think they may match for some kind of a geometric triangular thing, but I'm not always sure. And I think, if I get that shoulder tilt, just looking at if I was in an airplane and I put my arm straight out so you can see it easier, this is a zero. And then the farther
Yeah.
I tilt away from the bar is going to be more and more and more side lean as I'm banking the plane, right? That's the last part because if I lean directly back, Henrik, as you're looking at me at a 45, I
Yeah.
get both the lean back and the lean left for free. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to run a curve. I've been experimenting with this. You can run them on a straight line at the 45. If you want to get some lean back and some lean left, you don't actually have to run a curve. You can run a straight line and plant your foot at a 45 and run right up through there, drive the knee across, and you'll get some of it. Okay. Now, we both know you're not running a straight line through there. You're going to flex that line on your curve. Okay. But the curve adds a dimension, it adds the shoulder tilt to the left. That's my
Right.
third lean. Okay. And that's completely dependent on the shape of the curve. It has
Right.
to be, obviously both fast enough for you to really trust leaning on it. I always tell them, I go, if you're not running fast enough and you lean really hard, you're just going to fall over. So you got to be carrying
Yeah.
in speed. But the
Yes.
other huge part of that is getting the shoulders tilted to match because you and I both know you can run a curve without tilting your shoulders. I can
100%.
stand straight up and run a
Yeah.
curve and
Yes.
have those two lean back angles that we're already talking about, but not have this way over here. There are some people that, even though the foot plant was parallel, like you said, still do get the left part of it at least because they are banking the plane as they run. But you and I are in full agreement. I think the torque on the ankle, as your
Yeah.
body is running at that back corner and you put the foot across it at a weird angle,
Yes.
you're putting a lot of strain on that medial collateral ligament on your ankle. And I
Yes.
know a lot of
Yes.
guys. Barshim just retired because of that. Tamberry's rolled that foot. I had Lee Balkin when I was at UCLA, he had terrible ankles. He was always hurt, so
Yeah.
and Lee Balkin was 6'4" and like maybe 160 pounds. Tall, skinny, real, and he just had frail ankles. Now I was fortunate. I never had problems with my ankles, but I was taught
Me
that
neither.
parallel thing too, and I can't. It's tough for me to get away from when I jump
Yeah.
hill, I have trouble. It's almost a reflex to put it down on the ground. And I've had some people go past it. I don't know if you ever had
Yes.
anybody that actually gets because they have to step away and then dive back to
Yeah.
get into the pit, and you're like, no, that's never going to work. And they may have really good flexibility. I had a kid jump 6'8" in high school doing that. And I'm telling his dad, I'm like, look, we have to fix this, and
Yes.
we attacked it for like a couple months. And it was, if anything, it got worse. I would
Oh.
put a ramp down and point it
Yeah.
at that corner. And I say, you need to
Yeah.
leave right off the ramp at a 40
Yeah.
and drive me across. And he would step across the ramp, and you're like, it was a nightmare.
That's rough. That's a
So
rough takeoff.
what else we got on store? You are again prolific, and I love watching your stuff. Where do you see this going now? You're still working with Stefan. You're gonna be training his son. There's other kids, I'm assuming. He doesn't just have his son. Is he training other athletes? Are you guys working together on that?
So the context is me and Stefan live 3 hours apart by car, so we're in different cities. But so I coach my own gang here in Uppsala, 1 hour from the capital, and I coach around 12 people.
Hmm.
in different skill sets, and then I wouldn't necessarily say that I coach Melvin, but I coach him on competitions, and then I'll do some. I wouldn't say necessarily programming because he's doing his own programming,
Hmm.
and I'm more of a mentor slash discussion partner
Right.
for him. And but me and Stefan, we have a daily contact. We talk about high jump every day and what to improve with certain athletes, and
Hmm.
especially me and Stefan's fundamental thing is how do we get Swedish high jump better. So
Right.
and we have different opinions on stuff, of course, but so we're just trying to develop as many high jump athletes as
Now,
possible, high
do
jump talents.
you get a chance to work with Fabian Delrid?
Me and Fabian are born 1 week apart, and we have been following each other for like until we were 21, 22. We
Uh-huh.
follow each other on competition, and I know Fabian very well, and I know his training very well, and his what he has done and what he has
Yeah.
done not. And but I don't coach him. Actually, the Instagram. The what would you call him? A jump influencer,
Uh-huh.
THP Strength. They coach Fabian now actually,
Uh-huh.
which is just
Okay.
interesting to see if he can get any results from that because he has been having his coach Vlado, really nice guy, but a very Sovietic mindset. A
Right.
lot of weight training,
Oh yeah.
a lot of weights, just
He's
and he
super
hasn't
strong,
been
yeah.
able to and he hasn't been able to transfer it, so because they
Right.
haven't put any emphasis on transferring his strength, so
Right.
he's just getting stronger, but he's not jumping higher.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
he's an
an
interesting
interesting.
study because he started off as a single armor. And all his junior
Yes.
stuff that he sent me, because I did a post for him, and then we did a
Yeah.
podcast. Great, nice guy, like you said. I mean, we just talked and talked like you and I do. And he asked me my opinion on things. I was like, this guy's jumping 7.73 quarters, and he's asking me. I'm like, well, yeah, this is what I think. And I had told him, I'd made certain statements in the past where I said, I don't think anybody's ever gonna be able to scrape their foot on the ground and jump higher than like 7.5, right? 7.4 maybe. And I saw a guy jump 7.5 over here at Mount Sac. He went to Texas Tech, and I can't remember his name. I should look it up because I use this all the time. And then when Fabian sent me his video, he I see
It's
the
great.
dust trail on a foot
Yeah.
scrape at 7.7. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, this kid, and like you're saying, every time I watch his stuff, I'm like, this kid's a monster. He's so
It's
strong
awesome.
and he's 6'9", and he
Yeah.
can run. I'm like, but why are we getting these mechanics where he's scraping his foot on the ground? And like you said, it's been 3 or 4 years now, and he's, like you said, he's been struggling. So I'm like, when you're talking about getting the Swedish jumpers, I'm like, well, where's Fabian in that list? Because he's 7.7 3/4 is up there. So,
I'm not sure why he hasn't, like, his coach is a good coach, and I don't really and the coach has been coaching Fabian from when Fabian was 12 years old, so
mhm.
they did a tremendous work with going up to 233 or
Yeah,
what the commercials are. And but Fabian has always been, in my opinion, a very explorative high jumper. He likes to explore different kinds of jumping, right? How
right,
does he could he jump with a dragging foot? Can he jump with the two arm? Can he jump with a one arm? Can he jump with no arms?
right.
I've seen Fabian jump in probably 150 different ways
Right.
over our lifetime.
I love
So
it.
he's been
Yeah.
very, and I think he's missing the consistency, but I don't have the full picture of it. But in my opinion, he's not consistent
Yeah.
in he's just changing whenever something isn't working.
Yeah.
And I think that it's because of his ankles, right? Because he has been having a lot of foot problems because he's 6'9" and very
Yeah.
heavy, but he has been missing some consistency because he
Yeah.
did 233 and 230, and
Yeah.
if he just stayed healthy and didn't gain any too much weight, he
Right.
would have been a world-class jumper. He would have
Yeah.
jumped at every Olympics and every world
Right.
championship there
Right.
is,
Yeah.
but he lacks the consistency in just
Wow.
focusing on the path and not changing the path every
Hmm.
every day.
Yeah.
That's my
I
opinion, but I don't have
I'm a
the full
big
picture.
fan. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. I like to see him,
Yeah.
do well. And it's interesting, like you're saying. I think we almost need to get like a think tank kind of thing, where you have you have your guy, and he's obviously, like you
Mm,
said, he's got his guy. There, you're not going to
mm,
pry him away from his coach, but there needs to be sometimes, there's a saying in a multitude of counselors, there's victory. Like,
mm,
the president of the United States has his cabinet, and his
mm,
cabinet is, you got finance and treasury and whatever, you've got war, you've got all these different things, and they
yeah.
can't be experts in everything, so they've got their circle, and you
You,
go around, you say, okay, who's doing this, what are we doing, why are we doing it? And I'm like you, I'm like, hey, Fabian, 6'9" is like the gift set of all time, right? You've got,
mm,
look at the other great jumpers. Mogenberg, won the Olympics in 84. He was 6'8", every inch of
yeah.
6. Stefan Joberg was 6'6". This
Mm,
Bondarenko cat, 6'7", 6'8", fast, high speed, but rail thin, right?
mm,
And strong, but
yeah.
not that strong. You watch Bondarenko stuff, it's laughable. I've never seen
Yeah.
that lift anything
I agree.
higher than a 25-pound plate, and you're like,
No.
and you're looking at him going, how does this guy get off the ground? I'm like, well, he's tall, he's fast, and he's light, and so, and that stress on the ankle joint just out of the speed alone is tremendous
Mm,
without putting more
mm,
force through there, right? With a
yes.
stronger plant and all the things.
Yeah.
So, we got to find a way to, maneuver that around. And then I found the same problem, and when I was in high school, I was, whatever 6'3" translates to, and about 180 pounds. My mom was scared to death when I played football. She's like, "You're gonna die. You're gonna break your neck." I was like, "Okay, whatever." But
Mm,
when I got to UCLA, I put on 15 pounds in 1 year,
yeah.
and I didn't get any stronger. So I
No.
suffered through the strength to weight adjustment period that a lot of high school
Mm,
kids go through over here.
yes.
For some
Rough.
reason, changing from 18 to 19 was a tough transition, man. I put on 15 pounds. I didn't get any faster or stronger, and I jumped like crap. I jumped, 210 in high school. I think I jumped 205 once my freshman year, and the rest of it was really bad. So it was like, and then I got stronger. So the second year, I started squatting well over 400 pounds, and I started, looking more like Fabian, to be honest.
Yeah.
6'3", 195, but I had doubled my body weight in squats. Whereas before I would say I was in maybe 120%. Now I'm at 200% of my own mass. And
Mm,
darned if I didn't get faster and jump higher, right? Simple,
mm,
simple relationship. But I would have liked to have gained all this power and kept lighter, right? If I could have
yeah.
jumped at
Yeah.
180 instead of
Yeah.
195, I feel like I
Mm,
could have jumped a lot higher. And that's what
mm,
both Dell and Lee were telling me. The guys that I was jumping with, they were real, thin. I had forever, I had people coming up and asking me if I was a decathlete. They're like, because you're just too
really?
big. I was big, for a high
Yeah.
jump. All the
Yeah.
guys that I jumped against were much more, I'm not going to say frail, but they were
No.
thin framed. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I've got big bones or whatever, but it's like
Mhm.
I was built, more like after that. I remember when I got to 195, I was looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, God, if I'd have been like this in high school, my mom might have not have been scared of me getting hurt playing football, and I might have actually played some football, because I
Yeah.
was twice the athlete when I put on
Mm,
those 15 pounds. The pounds didn't do anything, but when I got the strength to match, all of a sudden I was
mm,
like, this is a different kind of cat,
mm.
So
Yeah.
we've got so many variables that you and I are talking about between, body types and approach angles and this and that. It's
Yeah.
funny how it all, we're talking about differences between great athletes. I mean, Vashti Cunningham has been to 3 Olympic Games, which I'm never going to sniff, right? And we're sitting there looking at her going, well, she could jump so much higher, right? If she would just listen to me. It's just
Yeah.
listen to me,
That,
Vashti. We'll fix all your problems, But it's like there's so many things that you could hit
yeah.
on.
Yeah. Really. Yeah. So let me go back to where you said like the with the cabinet thing, where the
Hmm.
treasury and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so that's one of the reasons why I actually want to do this kind of stuff, where I go on podcasts and talk to people like you, because the main problem, in my opinion, especially as a young coach here in Sweden, people are not super helpful. People's ego are
They're
too big in
competing.
Sweden.
Yeah.
Yeah, So the thing with, especially with Fabian, because the best high jumpers in Sweden, right? Two pretty bad ones, but it's Fabian and Melvin, right? And to win the nationals, you need to jump 215. So it's a very low level.
Right.
And Fabian and Melvin has competed over the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years. So the conflicts, about Stefan, me, Melvin, and Fabian over here,
Right.
we we don't talk like
Right.
too much.
Yeah.
I'm friends with Fabian because I've known him for 20 years, but
Right.
so there's too much ego in Sweden, and I'm aiming to like broaden my perspective, talk to people like
Yeah.
you, talk to people from Australia, and I'm planning on moving away from Sweden because of this so much,
Mhm.
this bubble.
Yeah.
So people like you are very helpful. I can text you and say, "Hey, what's your opinion on this? And
Right.
how do you approach this?" And you're going to be helpful with me.
Yeah.
If I take some high jump coach in southern Sweden or something, he's going to ignore me. So
Yeah.
I'm on my way up and trying to make
Yeah.
a name for myself and
Absolutely.
really try to develop Swedish high jump basically.
Yeah.
But people aren't helpful. So
Yeah.
when
Well,
you
I tell
reach
you,
out, they're gonna shut
yeah.
you down.
We should get you out here, man, in California, because my thought process is, you guys do amazing work and with much smaller population, right? Over here, I mean, the US is huge. We've got
Yeah.
millions of people in each state, and we've got, the high school state meet, depending on your state, you're going to have some kids jumping well over, 220. They just had
Yes.
they had an under 20 out here at Eugene, right? The Nike money, and the winner was jumped 225, 226 in high school, right?
Yeah.
So 274.5, 74 3/4. So,
I
you
would
look at
love
that,
to work with
there's
people like
talent.
that.
Okay, we have talent all over the
Yes.
place here in the US. But it's more likely that for those athletes, they're going to go and play football, they're going to go and play
Hmm.
basketball. They may be
Right.
soccer players or football players. They're going to do anything other than track and field because you can't
Yes.
make any money at doing track
No.
and field over here. You're not going to get an NIL deal for track and field. Now, I know of some athletes that have, but these NIL deals are like, we'll give you $12,000 a year. So you get $1,000 a month as a college student, which is great. It's better than nothing. And you're getting your education paid for. And I know an athlete who jumped 6'8" this last year and got that deal. And I'm like, how did you make
What?
that work? I jumped 210 in high school. When I got to
Yeah.
UCLA, they said, you can come and try out if you'd like, but we're not going to pay you. So it was like, I said, well, what do I have to do to get paid? And they said, you got to jump 220. And I'm like, okay, I jumped 210 in high school, but that first year was terrible. My second year, I
Mm.
jumped 218, and they said, okay, you jumped 7.2, we can talk. And even then, it wasn't some mega deal. I'm not getting paid six figures. Like if you're going
No.
to get that kind of NIL money over here, you better be a starting quarterback or, a blue chip basketball player to get that kind of money. You're not going to get anything as a track and field star unless I'm going, maybe you're an SEC school, LSU, Georgia. Georgia had Elena
Would
Kulichenko,
be
right,
nice.
win the high
Yeah.
jump for them the last couple of years. So if
Yeah.
you're a competitive SEC school or a competitive Big Ten college, Michigan,
Mm.
Ohio State, you got some pockets. You got deep pockets. You can
Mm.
afford to pay those athletes. Their track and field's still not going to bring in any money. You have to have
No.
money washing over your program from these other sports, basketball and football in particular. If you're Michigan and you just won a national championship, you've made millions of dollars on just getting to the championship game and being on TV under that big, scope. But when
Yeah.
you're a track and field meet, even the Nike stuff, it's like, yeah, you might fill the stadium, but I didn't see it on TV over here. I,
No.
I wouldn't
No.
even know where to find it on TV.
Oh.
You'd have to search for it. So, we've got that whole thing going on, but I think having you over here would be like, oh my gosh, I keep trying to tell these young kids, and I hear all these guys going, I'm going pro. I'm like, come on, man. You're not a pro. Pro athletes make money. You're going to make dribbles, maybe.
Mm.
If you're a professional, all it means is you're out of college. So if you're
Mm.
out of college and you're on your own and you're training, how are you going to get any better? There's no structure over here, Henrik. There's
No.
nothing. Once you get out of college, you're
Mm.
basically, unless you stay and train at the college. which
Mm.
everybody's growing up now. You're what? You're 28 and you're still on campus, right? These are all kids. They're all in their 20s,
Yeah.
early 20s. So you're not going to hang around unless you're going to graduate school or something like that, and maybe a couple of years, but you're going to start thinking about getting married. You're going to start thinking about getting a real job. And how are you going to continue to train? In college, you're given all these things. You got a great place to train. You've got coaches, you've got people. They want you to do well. They want you to compete for them at the conference and NC2A level, blah, blah, blah. Once you're out of that, that goes away. I'm here to tell you. I remember finding coaches and
I know.
places to train. And if you rolled your ankle, what do? You're living at home. You don't have
Yeah.
an ice whirlpool anymore. You don't have that stuff. You got to go out of your way to do that stuff. So, and all that talent, but who's stepping up and coaching
Picking them
it?
up.
I'm telling everybody, I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, come to
I would love to.
California. Come
I
to
would love to.
California, come here, set up camp, and start getting like you're saying. I know, I know guys like you and me. There's people that are coaching the high jump here in the U.S. at the collegiate level that know nothing. They are worthless as high jump
I've
coaches.
seen that.
They've got great athletes and they're sitting there going, I think you should try this, or in my opinion, that, or whatever. And you're like, dude, you're not a high jump coach. You are the high jump coach, but you're not a high jump coach. It's easy to
Makes sense.
have the title, but you might have
Yeah.
not one clue what you're doing. And what is the problem with that? Maybe they were a decathlete. Maybe they were just an assistant graduate coach and they go along and they recruit this kid who doesn't know any better. Like, I'm going to this big school and I'm getting money. Yeah, you get there and there's nobody to help you. You know,
That, so,
maybe in the
so
weight room,
that's that,
you might get
that's
stronger.
basically my opinion on like I we have a lot of athletes in Sweden who wants to attend college, right? Because it's glamorous.
Hmm.
The mindset, the perspective of Swedish athletes going to college, they think it's, oh, I'm gonna have this the best time of my life. I'm gonna develop, and 9 times out of 10, Swedish athletes come back worse
Hmm.
if
Yeah,
they would have stayed. So
agreed.
basically I have probably 1,000 people in my inbox texting me about
Mhm.
coaches, athletes, all on collegiate athlete, high school athletes. They want my opinion on stuff,
Hmm.
and I could probably make that a living actually. But
Yeah.
but I have so many coaches reaching out to me. I think at least 100 coaches from the
Hmm.
States who reach out to me about their athletes, sending me
Hmm.
videos and want me to analyze it. And
Right.
and I'm really thinking like whenever I'm done with physical therapy school, I'm moving away, and it's either Australia or the US.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so depending on how easy it is to move to a certain place,
Right.
like I would love to. I've been to the States 12 times. I love being in the States actually.
Right.
Not a lot of people are a big fan of the US for now, but
I
but
know,
but
right?
but but, but I am. So
Yeah.
I would love to explore that opportunity, but that's a discussion for outside the
Yeah.
podcast. So
Yeah, right. Well, hey, I know we're running late and I'm getting ready to head off to my session, but as always, Henrik, I mean, I could do 4 or 5 hours, dude.
yeah, we could
There's
we could
so
we could.
so much stuff to go over. I have so many, like you said, I'm that guy that loves the discussion and the debate. I mean, I'm glad we opened up the foot plan angle thing. I like to
Yeah.
hit on some of my majors sometimes, like that knee drive, up and
Hmm.
across. I think
Yeah.
that's so huge. And getting that taught, I'd love to have your input next time I reserve the right to go. Hey, we're just going to hit knee drive up and across. Like, how do you get them to do that and do it well? I've got drills and I've got things and I see progressions, and yet every once in a while somebody will hit that, and I'm like, see, look at that. Didn't that feel different? And then they're like, yeah. And you're like, okay, well, I'm telling you, all the elites do it. So we got to get you to do it. And there's like, it's like pulling teeth sometimes. But hey, I appreciate you taking your time again. Let's
Appreciate
get you
you.
over here to the States. I
I
wouldn't
agree.
actually mind visiting Sweden myself and become a better acquainted with this world. I would like to get to Australia as well. So maybe we can go over and visit Brandon Stark and watch him train and take notes
Yeah.
and do all that stuff. It would be great, right? Be the jet
Yeah.
setting high jump crowd and start getting, hobnobbing with all the really smart people. And I think you're in better contact with that than me. I would love to sit down there and just listen to Stefan talk for a while. So, um,
He's always nice to talk to. And speaking of the thing you just said, I had lunch with Nikola Olislager's coach the other
Really?
day. It was
Awesome.
an amazing experience, but we can talk more about that the next time.
Yeah,
But
that'd
it
be
was
great.
just amazing.
I look forward to it. Let's not wait so long in between. We'll make you a regular
Right.
guest on the podcast and say what's up with Henrik and his
Yeah.
journey because it's you're on an interesting one. You started it a lot earlier than I am. I'm very jealous.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm
sir.
pumped.
Yeah. Well, hey, good luck. When are you finishing up with the you said physical therapy school or
1.5 years. So we're getting close.
yeah, yeah. And that's interesting. The way that it lines up with what you're doing is, fascinating too. I've got my degrees in, kinesiology and
Yeah,
exercise science, which help. The realm that I learned about the hard way is, going through the physical therapy for the injuries. And you start looking at it instead of recovery, looking at it what I call pre-covery, which is let's avoid getting hurt at all, right? And do a lot of these things. And that's a huge
that's
field.
my main.
I
Yeah,
think the recovery is huge because of the athletics and the sports and getting your athletes healthy for the big meets. But
yeah,
pre-covery is even bigger because I would rather keep my athletes competing and not have them miss games because they're hurt, or whatever.
totally agree.
Get
That's why I
into,
do it.
yeah, load management and all those kinds of things, right? All right,
Yeah.
man. Well, hey, Henrik, you have a good one. We'll do this
You
again
too.
real soon. All right. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Thank
welcome.
you. See
Thank
ya.
you. See ya. All right. Let's end.